Mayor Bradley has been the mayor of Sarnia for decades, so certainly very well aware of border issues as they've existed over the years and as they exist today. And I'm glad to have you back on our show this morning. The border city mayors, the alliance, the Border Mayors Alliance, Mayor Bradley, numbers about 20 mayors now across the country. Surrey, BC, just joining yesterday. I'm wondering, what do the mayors believe is going to happen tomorrow? Is it happening tomorrow?
I think most of us believe it is going to happen tomorrow. There's no reason to think it's not going to. It is interesting to hear the national perspective from the mayors. And I should mention that council that the Prime Minister's put together still does not have a mayor on it that can bring that perspective. What I'm hearing in different provinces, it's different issues and different impacts, but none of it is good news for Canadians. None of it is good news. And I point to my own community of Sarnia. We're the energy hub of Eastern Canada. We have Line 5 that comes in. We have gas that comes from Pennsylvania. If there's immediate actions taken on those items, then the pain will be felt by all Canadians immediately with skyrocketing energy prices. Now, it is not clear yet whether Trump is going to do that or not, but it is a key part of any retaliation against us.
You raised a couple of things I'd like to get some more detail on. Number one, I was going to ask exactly what you hinted at, whether you feel that the municipal viewpoint, the mayor's views, has been heard by federal and provincial leaders, whether they've heard you, whether you've been briefed by them at all, anything directly?
Oh, we haven't. We've had individual encounters with our MPs, but there's no talking to us as an organization. I will tell you, part of our outreach discussed yesterday, the Canadian Alliance of Border Mayors, is to talk to our counterparts in the U.S., the mayors, senators, and congressmen. My own view is that they're going to turtle on us. I'm watching over in Port Huron, I'm watching Michigan, elsewhere, that the American politicians right now are fearful of Donald Trump. And they're fearful of looking like they're cooperating with Canada. And so that's going to be a much bigger challenge than what it was back in 2018, where a lot of those politicians on the American side came on board with us because they understood the negative economic impact on their communities. This time, it's going to be a big mountain to climb.
That is really interesting, that difference. So even though they may be indicating that they're receptive to your arguments, when push comes to shove, they're going to go with what the president is saying. In response to that, the chair of your alliance, Mayor Dilkens, was putting on social media what you've been doing. And he writes that we have already begun identifying alternative supply chains to mitigate immediate disruptions, and we're working together to develop contingency strategies. Can you give me any more detail on that? What are you looking specifically at in terms of alternative supply chains and some mitigation measures?
Well, there's different sectors that can do different things. In the sector that I'm involved in, the energy sector, we don't have a lot of alternatives. To ship by ship, to by rail. I mean, that hasn't worked out well in Canada. We don't have an immediate way to deal with any cutoffs of supplies of energy because all these pipelines either come to the U.S. or come through the U.S. So we're in a different position, but it's going to take time. And, the whole idea of trying to understand the economic impact is going to be massive, but we're not ready to be able to explain that to the consumer right now. And my own belief is whatever happens that impacts negatively on Trump, and it will, on his consumers, he'll just blame it as he does on everything else, on someone else. It's never his fault for anything. And so that's our challenge. But I will tell you, the mayors are united, and we're going to defend our communities, and we're going to stand up for Canada.
And how? And to what end, do you think?
I just have a letter I signed yesterday. This is more on the patriotism side, going out to every mayor in the country, saying this Canada Day, it's our 158th Canada Day. Let's do something extraordinary in our communities to send the message, not to the White House, but to ordinary Americans. And I'm hearing it daily, Heather, daily from people. They're not going to Chicago. They're not going to Port Huron, Michigan. They're not going to go down to Florida or Arizona for a few weeks. So Canadians are doing their own protest. It's not organized, but it's growing. It's growing big time.
What if it does, as most seem to expect, take effect tomorrow? You mentioned it might be a little early to give the overall economic impact, but what do you think the picture will be in Sarnia, economic energy hub? What specifically will be hurt, businesses most, sectors most hurt, and sort of potential dollar value here to your community?
Well, it's the chemistry sector, it's the petrochemical sector. It'll also be agriculture, and Mayor Dilkens spoke about this quite eloquently. It'll be the auto sector. Sarnia and Windsor have been identified in Ontario as the two main industries and sectors that will take the biggest hit. The sun will come up tomorrow, and it'll come up on Sunday, and it'll come up Monday. But we will deal with it as we always have in crisis as Canadians, but it's going to be very difficult. Just when we're recovering from COVID and getting the economy back on track, we have this friendly ally doing severe damage, not just to our economies, but to our relationship. And that's the really sad thing.
Do you have the sense that the people of your community appreciate the impact this could have on them and what your message is to them, but I think by extension to all Canadians?
Well, Heather, it's like any issue. If you raise the water bills, there's no impact till they get the bill. And I think that's what's going to happen here. Until the impact is start to be felt by Canadians, and then they'll start to understand this was generated by our biggest ally. And that's going to take time. And there will be different interpretations. You see it on social media now saying, well, it's all about we haven't strengthened our border. That's a side issue, and we are strengthening our border. And I would make the case the American border concerns me more than the Canadian border. But however, it will take time for those impacts, and it's going to be just a dog's breakfast of media reports and stories in the months ahead about those impacts when these tariffs hit.
Well, let's stay in touch then once we see what happens when they take effect, if it is indeed tomorrow as expected, and then how it affects Sarnia and your people and the border mayors across the country. Thanks so much for the time today, Mayor Bradley. It's always good to see you.
Thank you.